Hey guys, welcome to BP, the Bible Perspective, the gospel of sex toys and selling weed in the church. What? Now, before we get into it, please like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comments section below. All comments are welcome. Pastor Jamal Bryant, who is currently pastor of New Birth Missionary Baptist Church, was recently on a doing an interview in which he, in my opinion, is promoting fornication, sex outside of the God-ordained marriage. We'll get into that later. And then in the same interview, he also was promoting the idea that he wants to get into the growing, developing, and then selling and distribution of weed. And in his theological mindset, this is one of the best ways to attract black men to the church. Now, this is no surprise to me coming from a Jamal Bryant. He grew up in the African Methodist Episcopal denomination. His father pastored a African Methodist Episcopal church. The abbreviation is AME. Now, just so you know, that denomination has a very rich history in our nation, dating back to the 17th century. Slavery, one of the first and then oldest black denominations in our nation. Jamal, growing up in that denomination, would, when he came of age, would start the Empowerment Temple African Methodist Episcopal Church of Baltimore, but got into a little trouble. He was kind of forced out because of allegations of adultery and probably some other things. But he would then be hired by New Birth Missionary Baptist Church in Lithonia, Georgia, which is right outside of Atlanta. Okay. New Birth he succeeded the late Eddie Long. Now, New Birth itself, like a lot of churches, I'm going to say in this kind of category, they are built upon religion, traditions, and mess. Okay, let me just say that, mess. It is not uncommon to find churches like this, where you would have a church board, especially upon the death of the pastor, will begin to fight over church assets. Okay, and sometimes depending on how large the church, New Birth is a mega church, they would fight over. You could get into very, very long, drawn out fight. This is not the topic here, but it is an interesting one. Okay, so it's not, my point is I'm not surprised that New Birth would hire, in other words, the leaders at New Birth that would hire a person like Jamal Bryant. He's a very charismatic person. He has a platform, and so whatever, that they hired him. Okay, in this interview that he was involved with, as I said, he began to promote what I'm going to say is just straight out fornication and premarital sex outside of the God-ordained church, and the selling of weed. Now, again, I'm not surprised this coming from Jamal Bryant. I am going to criticize it, however, according to Scripture. Now, before I'm going to play the video, and then I'm going to come back and unpack it. Okay, so here we go.
I'm after people who don't go to church. And a lot of churches are just recycling people from other churches. That's not who I'm after. I'm looking for people that smell like weed. I'm at a place, Rashawn. Really, is New Birth is the largest land-owning black church in America.
Wow.
And so my position to my deacons is, why aren't we not raising cannabis? I'll be able to bring in black males. They're able to do it legally. I'm teaching them farming.
Oh, my God.
I'm helping them to enhance the ecosystem. This is the kind of conversation. So if the guy, black boy in Bankhead, said, they growing weed at the church, where do I join?
Yes.
I don't need no pamphlet for him. Yeah.
Right.
He coming in. And that's the group that I'm going after. Yeah.
That's
Okay. So you heard it. I want to go back and unpack it. But before I do, I was thinking about this. What he said about the last statement about attracting using weed. Now, this is going to be comical, I admit, but this is coming from the movie Trading Places with Eddie Murphy. Okay, and listen to this short clip here.
You guys, step inside. Nice and warm in here. Whiskey. All you want. Hey, look, man, I ain't falling for this.
Now, I played that because notice their lure. In other words, the scene right there, these two races, this is in the movie, and the reason why I played that is because in their mind, this is what they think they needed to do in order to entice Eddie Murphy's character. Whiskey, all you can want, right? Now keep that in mind, okay? All right, so let's go back and let's unpack what he said.
I'm after people who don't go to church. And a lot of churches are just recycling people from other churches.
Now, a couple of things. He says, I'm after people who don't go to church. Well, what happens when you get them to church? I mean, it's true what he's saying, and it certainly should be true what he's saying. But what happens after you get them in the church? Keep that in mind. That's important. Because as a pastor, and he is a pastor, not an evangelist. As a pastor, what is your job description? What is your commission from God? Okay. Now, he one of the things that he did say was so true was in the church world, every denomination, basically is just a recycling oftentimes of churches. I mean, of people, of members. I'm going to go a step further and say this. If you go back to almost any what's called the evangelists, these evangelical meetings, you look at all of these, like for example, they are these huge stadiums, right? And you can go even so far back as Billy Graham. He would pack in these huge stadiums, these phenomenal attendance, 50,000, 80,000, right? 99% of those people were already church people. 90% of that. Okay? So okay, let's go on.
That's not who I'm after. I'm looking for people that smell like weed. I'm at a place, Rashawn. Really.
Well, okay, maybe I get what he's saying, but wouldn't you be? First of all, wouldn't you want to get all sinners, not just the weed heads? I mean, even if you want to confine yourself to the black community, wouldn't you want to get all sinners?
is New Birth is the largest land-owning black church in America.
Wow.
And so my position to my deacons is, why aren't we not raising cannabis? I'll be able to bring in black males. They're able to do it legally. I'm teaching them farming.
Oh my God.
I'm helping them to enhance the ecosystem.
Okay, so problem with what he is saying here, black males. So is he saying that black males, and this is a stereotype, is it not, that he says black males, that your average black male is a weed head? That's what you're going to attract him with? Now, I can tell you, even as a sinner, I didn't smoke weed. I didn't do drugs. I didn't even drink. Now, I admit that that's not always true. And yeah, there are people out there who do smoke weed. But if his logic is I'm attracting the black males for the purpose of what? Smoking weed. That's your only category? And then he says we'll be able to sell it, right? We'll be able to. I don't know if it's true that his church is the largest land in America. I just don't know if it's true, okay? But the idea that what he is basically saying is that he is going to farm, produce, distribute weed. Now, weed is big business. I think still Colorado might lead in the production of weed revenue, okay? So the idea is that, is he looking to just produce and earn revenue? Right? So what is the purpose of smoking? Why does, as a pastor, that's his approach, other than to raise money? And is he hiding behind this fact of, I can use weed to get black people in, and then, because guarantee you, you know that if he was to produce weed, that he wouldn't care about attracting. Jesus said this about to his disciples, right? He says, hey, they were cleaning their nets, right? They had just came off a fishing night of fishing, which they didn't catch anything, but they were cleaning their nets, and Jesus says, "Follow me, I will make you to fish for men." Guarantee you, he is not talking about catching men. That when the net that he is going to cast is a net worth. In other words, do you actually think he's going to care about catching black men to get them in? Hey, here's some weed, right? Here's some weed, you can come in. No, he's going to be selling weed, making money. Okay.
This is the kind of conversation. So if the guy, black boy in Bankhead, said, they growing weed at the church, where do I join?
Yes.
I don't need no pamphlet for him. Yeah.
Right.
He coming in.
He coming in.
And that's the group that I'm going after. Yeah.
That's
whiskey, right? But it gets okay. Again, I'm not surprised from Jamal Bryant. Okay, I'm not surprised that this is his appeal, whiskey. But in the same interview, he also suggests sex toys. All right, so let's. I'm gonna play it again, and then I'll unpack it.
For me to tell 16-year-olds to be celibate is one thing. A 37-year-old who's used to getting some, I need a different kind of gospel.
yeah.
So the church ain't telling me nothing about sex toys. They ain't saying nothing about the church telling me to be celibate, but my gynecologist saying something got to happen down there because your stuff's shutting down.
Yeah.
So we got to have real gospel for grown-ups.
I'm about to go to New Birth. I'm going to New Birth on Sunday.
All right. Let me share now. I want to share a verse of scripture here. Uh, and when he says that they need a different kind of gospel, this is Galatians chapter chapter 1, Galatians chapter 1, and listen to what he says, verse 6, and this is Paul writing to the Galatians. I am amazed that you are so quickly turning away from him who called you by the grace of Christ and are turning to a different gospel. Now remember he said they need a different kind of gospel? Not that there is another gospel, but there are some who are troubling you and want to change the good news about the Messiah. But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach to you a gospel other than what we have preached to you, a curse be upon him. As we have said before, I now say again, if anyone preaches to you a gospel contrary to what you have received, a curse be on him. So when Pastor Bryant says that the people need a different gospel, what gospel then is he preaching? Let's now unpack his sermon. Okay, again, well, this message here.
For me to tell 16-year-olds to be celibate is one thing. A 37-year-old who's used to getting some, I need a different kind of gospel.
Yeah.
All right, so problem. You need to tell. Here's my point. Why would you tell? Why do you think you need to tell 16-year-olds to be celibate? As the world right now is preaching, why not just say use birth control? That's what the world is doing. And then he goes on, and of course he says that the gynecologist, now I can't speak to that because I'm not a gynecologist. That they're telling them that they're to the woman who's used to getting something, the gynecologist is telling them that they need to do something down there. So what is his solution? Okay, what is the solution?
So the church ain't telling me nothing about sex toys. They ain't saying nothing about the church telling me to be celibate, but my gynecologist saying something got to happen down there because your stuff's shutting down.
Yeah.
So, okay, is he promoting sex outside of marriage? Is he promoting fornication? He's saying this stuff has to happen. How do you suppose? And then will you then tell them what kind of sex toys they should be using? Will you have classes in your church that say, hey, here are sex toys? Huh? Will you say this? Here's I'm gonna right there. But sorry for being so graphic right here. This was the cleanest, by the way. I was kind of looking at pictures to show of sex toys. Well, this was sort of the clean. Will you present this in your church, sex toys? Were you going to say, hey, guess what, guys, ladies in the church? I would certainly like to think about what exactly is it, how you would teach this. All right, here we go.
Shutting down.
Yeah.
So we got to have real gospel for grown-ups.
I'm about to go to New Birth. I'm going to New Birth on Sunday.
Now, he says we have to have real gospel. Real gospel. What does that mean? Okay, let me go back to one more verse of scripture here. That here is the sad part, is that at new birth you're not going to receive scripture, right? You're not going to receive teaching, because he's saying we need something more than this. But let me read something to you. I'm going to read this whole thing right here. And obviously we're not going to do a deep dive into this, but listen to what he says right here. Now, in response to the matters you wrote about, it is good for a man not to have relations with a woman. But because of sexual immorality, but because sexual immorality is so common, each man should have his own wife And each woman should have her own husband. A husband should fulfill his marital responsibility to his wife, and likewise a wife to her husband. A wife does not have the right over her own body, but her husband does. In the same way, a husband does not have the right over his own body, but his wife does. Do not deprive one another sexually, except when you agree for a time and devote yourselves to prayer, then come together again. Otherwise, Satan may tempt you because of your lack of control. Now, I wanted you to see this here because if you do it God's way, and that's my point here, that if you do it God's way, what Pastor Jamal is doing is the world's way. So marriage outside, fornication, and by the way, the definition of fornication is the self-centered, self-gratifying use of a person, place, or thing for one's own gratification. It is the use of a person or things. Now he's promoting sex toys. The promotion of a place, a person, or things. Think about that. A place, a person, or things for one's own satisfaction. And what Pastor Jamal Bryant should be teaching his congregation, the women and men, okay, is that God's way is you build your marriage, one, on God's love, on God's commitment, and then two, if you teach it God's way, both partners, man and the woman, are to be gratifying in love one another. Both should be doing this. That's what he should be teaching, and shame on him for not doing that. But again, I shouldn't expect more from the likes of Jamal Bryant. But if you do it God's way, do you really need sex toys? Now, I'm going to say this. I'm going to also say people shouldn't be in your bedrooms either, married couples. In other words, whatever you do in the privacy of your bedrooms should stay there. But the fact that he said that this is what needs to be taught, and you notice the host said, oh, I'm going to go to his church. Now, is she saying that because, oh, I'm going to go to his church because I'm going to get some? Or I'm going to be taught? Is that why she's excited about going to New Birth under Pastor Jamal? See, the idea is that what his appeal to is to the carnal nature of people, not the godly nature, to me, which produces true love, true happiness, true gratification if you do it God's way. All right, guys, that is my perspective. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP the Bible Perspective. As always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comments section below. All comments are welcome. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button